Welcome to the second video in the series of New York State Coaches Safety Modules. I'm your current state rules interpreter, Casey Gohl. This module will cover the 2019 through 2020 NFHS rule changes. In this module, we will cover NFHS Rule 1, including the definition changes, NFHS Rule 2 changes, and NFHS Rule 3 changes. We will not cover the NFHS Rule 4 changes, as that applies specifically to dance. First, let's take a look at the changes for definitions, which are the basis for all of our rules and what you should always refer back to when interpreting any spirit rule. We have two definition changes this year. Dive rolls are still illegal. However, the definition of dive roll has changed, which makes it so that you may now have a brief time where the top person is airborne, but you may not be in a swan or arched position. Think about it as a hop forward roll. This allows for low, safe skills and choreography without having to worry about one person who didn't lean forward enough. This has been a college rule for approximately 10 years. The rules and definitions regarding switch liberties have been expanded to allow for proper lead-up skills into other positions like targets or extensions, renaming the switch lib to switch up. Some specific examples include a 1-foot load to ball up to target, or a walk-in reverse to hands. The rationale for this rule change is a switch-up skill can be performed to positions other than a liberty. Changing the label and the definition reflects the different body positions in which the top person can land. Let's take a look at a video example. This is an example of a switch-up with the new definition change of a switch-up to prep as the flyer starts with 1 foot in a load, is tossed, then lands with both feet in a prep. The first skill is the switch up, which is then followed by a release from prep level to prep level with a half twist. This is allowed by Rule 355B1 exception. Next, we will take a look at the changes for Rule 2. First, you should note that several rules have been moved from Rules 3 and 4 in order to consolidate the apparel and props rules into a single section. The changes to Rule 217C involve sign changes. In this new rule, the top person in a stunt may not release a hard sign to the ground. This is to further keep the performance surface area free of objects that may cause injury and to protect the other personnel on the floor. The top person may dismount with a sign using a bump down or a pop down, or they may hand it to a person on the floor as long as that person isn't a required spotter. The rationale for this rule change clarifies the discarding of signs and reduces risk by not having hard signs released from a top person in a stunt. The changes to Rule 2111 involve walking boots. The committee has added jumps and tumbling to the list of restrictions on participants in walking boots. A walking boot is not proper footwear, and this change clarifies that. A participant in a walking boot may participate in other aspects of cheerleading, including doing straight cheers with motions, signs, etc., but may not be part of a stunt, jump, or tumble. Finally, we will review the Rule 3 changes to the NFHS Spirit rules. Please note that we will mostly review changes only, so you still need to read through the entire rules book and become familiar with them. There are a variety of videos on the NYSPHSAA Safety webpage that demonstrate many of these rule changes. Be sure to check them out. The changes to Rule 327 involve stunts requiring spotters. First, they removed torch from this list of exceptions. A torch is a prep level stunt in which the top person's foot is in the hands of the base, which requires a spotter. Having a torch in this list of exceptions contradicts Rule 328. An extended straddle lift where the hands of the top are free and there are 3 bases under the legs does not require an additional spotter behind the stunt. An extended straddle lift where the hands of the top are connected to someone in front and there are 2 bases under the legs does not require an additional base behind the stunt. The person in front is considered to be a base, not a post by definition. Here is a visual example. If 3 bases are under the legs, you don't need a spot. If 2 bases and a front post or base is there, you do not need a spot. Only if two bases are under the legs only, this is when a spotter is required. So one way or another, you need to have 3 people underneath this skill. The changes to Rule 328 involve changes to stunts requiring spotters. A spotter is required for single base prep level stunts in which the foot or feet of the top person are in the hands of the base and tosses to single base shoulder stands. The rationale for this is a rewording for clarification. The previous wording was unclear as to whether the spotter was required for these 2 skills or for tosses to single base shoulder stands and tosses to stunts where the feet were in the hands. This clarifies that it is any time the feet are in the hands and also tosses to shoulders. The changes to Rule 333B5 involve braced inversions to new catchers. The previous rules only allowed braced release transitions and braced flips to go to new catchers. NFHS fixed this rule so that braced inversions and braced dismounts can also change bases. This allows inversions to be caught by new catchers, becoming consistent with other braced inversion rules that were changed in 2018. The criteria for this rule still states that new catchers have to remain close to the original bases and must be in place prior to the initiation of the inversion, similar to the other rules. The change to Rule 333C is simply a revision that helps clarify the intent of the rule and more accurately describes the connection required between the bracer and the top person. This revision does not change the intent of the rule. It states that the top person and at least one bracer must maintain hand-to-hand or arm contact. In regards to the rules of 335 involving braced flips, all of the current braced flip rules remain in place, such as double base prep with a spotter and 3 people under the top person, with the exception of a top person may now be braced by 1 or 2 bracers as long as each hand or arm of the top person has a connection with the bracer. This rule change allows for a few new skills: a prep level forward or backward flip between the arms of one bracer behind her, a side sumi where the top person holds both hands or arms of the bracer as they face each other, a side sumi where the bracer is behind the top person holding the waist and the top person holds the bracer's waist. This would be similar to a spotted cartwheel. Let's take a look at some video examples. This is an example of a legal single braced front flip to cradle. This is an example of a single braced back flip to extended position. Rule 336A3 has had a change where inversions may now release to any level. This allows inversions to release to an extended level. However, during the release, the flyer may not twist. This is an example of an inversion releasing to an extended position, specifically a back handspring release to extension. Here is another example of an inversion release to an extended position, specifically a shoulder press release to an extended target. 336C has been reworded in several areas of the wording that the top person must maintain contact. NFHS really meant that there just had to be a connection between the bracer and the top without intending who actually had to maintain the contact. So they've changed the wording to contact must be maintained between at least one base and the top person's upper body, waist, and above. In this example, the bases and the flyer maintain contact throughout the execution of the inversion, meeting the requirement. In this example, the base's hands lose contact with the flyer. However, it still meets the requirement because the flyer's hands are in the base's shoulders throughout the execution of the inversion. We have a change to Rule 337 involving props and inversions. The rule from the past is that a person loading into a stunt from a handstand can hold props. The front walkover with a sign or palms into a load. What's new is that a person in a prone position below prep level can now forward roll out with a sign or palms in their hands. Next, let's move on to non-release transitions. A change to Rule 334 is that a top person may be moved from a vertical position to a horizontal position or a cradle position, provided all the following conditions are met. The top person maintains contact with at least one original base, post, or spotter. They've also removed Part B, that catchers must be to the side or front of the person moving the top person. The rationale for this is both horizontal and straight body are redundant and removed. C was also removed as pendulum-type skills from extended position has been allowed since 2015-2016. NFHS currently allows dismount to new catchers and do not specify that the new catchers are to the side or front, therefore the criteria was removed. 355B involves braced release grips. This rule has been changed to allow releases as long as the top person and at least one bracer maintains hand-to-hand or arm contact. So the connection can be here, here, or both of them. Here's an example of a braced release transition. Note the flyer is holding the waist of the bracer, making this a legal release. For unbraced releases involving Section 355, you can now release a vertical to vertical release from prep level or above, meaning we can now do high-to-high releases, such as a high-to-high tic-tac. Some key components to this is that the flyer must remain in a vertical position and the legs are not in a seated or piked position. Also, vertical releases from an extended position to an extended position may not perform more than a quarter twist. Let's take a look at some video examples. Here's an example of a high-to-high tic-tac that is now legal. This is an example of a release that starts at extended and lands in a load, which is legal because they started at the extended position so they can release to any level. This is also an example of an extended stunt that releases to a load level stunt. Note, in all three of these examples, the flyer started at an extended position and released to any level. Next, let's move on to suspended splits. Rule 326B has been adjusted to now allow a top person in a suspended split to release a base in order to connect to a bracer. In the past, this was not technically allowed. The changes to Rule 363B involve brace suspended splits. A change occurred in B, which clarifies the connection between the top person and the base, maintaining hand-to-hand or arm contact, which is in line with the other rule changes this year. C and D have been removed. C is unnecessary for braced connections that don't release. It's not required anywhere else. And D is unnecessary wording. The skill is performed with and without this requirement without issue and simply follows technique. Finally, we have one change to dismounts. In 379, C is allowing bracers to be in a double base prep without a spotter is safe as brace transitions are allowed in a bracer in a prep without a spotter. This further aligns releases and dismounts that involve a bracer. The change to E allows for a quarter turn around the bracer to a cradle dismount, much like a release transition to a stunt. F allows the top person to be caught by a new catcher who are in place and not involved with any other skill prior to the initiation of a dismount, and does not increase safety risk for the top person. This is also allowed in Stunt Rule 355. This concludes the NFHS rule changes for 2019-2020. If you have any questions about the content in this module, you can submit them to the questions link on the Q&A page or contact your local rules interpreter.